is that is liberation possible? Is true liberation possible given where our attention, our focused attention has been, and how do we address issues of race, be it from a perspective of the dominant or the subordinate categories. If there's not an interest or commitment to exploring those deeper level of consciousness. Why don't I stop there and maybe see if you have conversations that you'd want to
great
share at this point.
I feel like, okay, that to take in what you just said is like, all right, let's have a pause for a minute to respect what it is that you just said. Yeah.
And at the same time, the way I understand you're asking a very provocative question. As I hear you, you ask the question in our cause of liberation, in this social cause for liberation, what we want to liberate in the, let's say, the subordinate, the race. Are we not just talking about illusions? Is liberation not something that is beyond these illusions? But at the same time, I would assume you're not denying the fact of subordination. You're not denying the fact of racism as being a social reality. So how can we look into the fact that maybe something deeper is true, is real? I think you called it natural energy. Was that?
No, the
natural intelligence.
Natural intelligence.
Pure intelligence.
Yeah, pure intelligence, natural intelligence. And of course, from a recognition of something like natural intelligence, liberation means something very different than if I'm identified with my whiteness or with my working class identity in which way ever. So we're talking about what is liberation really, without bypassing at the same time that social conflict and subordination is part of our social fabric. So my question is, would you say that somehow there's reality to both in some way, and somehow we have to find a way where we don't deny social realities without being locked into the social constructs that we make that are part of how we do society in this way?
I agree with you. I don't want us to deny, to be in a state of denial and to bypass. I don't think that is healthy, or that it is, or that you can do that. Mm-hmm. You cannot. And that is the dilemma. Because we are this dynamic field of consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's both and operating at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of this understanding or recognition of oneness has to be a true recognition, not a conceptual one. Mm-hmm. It cannot be, I understand that we're one anyway. Mm-hmm. I think that it has to be a full recognition of the truth the absolute truth of who, of the being that we are, to be able to then also see that there's another dimension of consciousness, even within this one body, that is aware of a belief, a false belief in the person, in the sense of a person. And so these two things for a while will happen simultaneously, that there is this recognition, oh, for me as a person for me in this body, in this black body, there will be a recognition of the ways in which I have internalized white racism. And at the same time, there is a recognition, beyond concept, that there is a field of awareness that can observe that I have this that I'm carrying this idea that's in my mind. So there are two levels, or I don't know if levels, but there's a way in which these two dynamic forms of consciousness can occur simultaneously. And so, and I can understand, you know, a person in this body, I understand an adverse consciousness towards black bodies. I feel that is felt in the physical body, that is observed by body language and words, that is observed by the socially constructed systems. That's observable. I can see that and sense that and feel that. And at the same time, there is this recognition that of a consciousness that transcends that. So it's both and. And so it's not a concept for me personally. It's not a concept. There's a way in which that is deeply sensed. And so for the reverse, of course, would be for people from white culture. I think that that what could be helpful, I don't know, what could be helpful is the recognition of the consciousness of superiority and dominance, and the way that is that manifests in the world, ideas, the way the global social reality is constructed. And to transcend that, would be the recognition that, in fact, that construct is false. That is not true. Those are stories that people made up, right? Those are stories that people made up, and I can recognize, because of a deeper understanding, that I am more than that. That I'm more than that. My musing continues with the notion that at some point, holding those two recognizing those two levels of consciousness, levels for lack of a better word, I think eventually becomes universal.
Mm.
Once you don't believe the story anymore, truly, once you recognize the falsehood, the untruth of it, I think that these two seemingly distinctive forms will fall away. Or I should say, the more universal, the less relative, the more universal sense of self becomes much more pronounced, much more dominant, and one can live their life from that space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the liberation comes from, because for example, as one who identifies as female in this Black body, and I no longer believe the stories. It's just a story. It's false. It's not real. I understand what it does when you believe it. I understand it. I see it. I know it. Yet at the same time, it does not consume my life. It does not overwhelm. It doesn't direct my daily life.
Yeah.
And so that's that in that space, that's where the liberation it then becomes, so it's not as if I'm waiting for